Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I rise this morning to speak on the nomination of Debo Adegbile as the candidate to serve as the Director of the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department. He'd be an Assistant Attorney General in the Justice Department if he were to be confirmed. It was 3:55 a.m. on December 9th, 1981, when 25-year-old Philadelphia police officer Danny Faulkner was brutally murdered in the line of duty. Just a few weeks ago, Officer Faulkner's widow, Maureen Faulkner, pleaded with the Senate Judiciary Committee to listen to her story. And it's a heartbreaking story. It's a story of how 32 years ago, a cold-blooded killer murdered her husband, and how political opportunists then seized the chance to deny her justice and propagate a very pernicious set of lies. It's also a story about how President Obama's current nominee to head the Justice Department Civil Rights Division, this gentleman, Debo Adegbile, joined in this gross abuse of our legal system. Unfortunately, our colleagues on the Senate Judiciary Committee, our Democratic colleagues, did not allow Maureen Faulkner to testify when the committee was considering this nominee. Madam President, I think Maureen Faulkner deserves to be heard. I think she has a right to be heard. We've heard a lot of voices and a lot of arguments in this discussion. I think Maureen Faulkner's voice deserves to be heard. And since she was not permitted to testify before the committee, I'm going to read to my colleagues here in the Senate the letter that she sent to all of us. And I'll begin now. Maureen Faulkner writes, "Dear Senators, while I would have preferred to do so personally, I'm writing this letter appealing to your sense of right and wrong, good and evil, as you consider the nomination of Debo Adegbile to be the next head of the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. 33 years ago, my husband, Philadelphia police officer Daniel Faulkner, was violently murdered by a self-professed revolutionary named Mumia Abu-Jamal. I was 24 years old. While most of my friends spent their summer at the Jersey Shore, I sat in a hot, steamy courtroom and watched in horror and disbelief as the man who murdered my husband tried to turn the courtroom into a political stage where he could spew his hatred and contempt for this country and our judicial system. At the moment my husband's blood-stained shirt was displayed by the evidence handler, Mumia Abu-Jamal turned in his chair and smirked at me, demonstrating his contempt for law enforcement. Thankfully, a racially mixed jury that was selected by Abu-Jamal, while representing himself, found him guilty. The following day, they sentenced him to death for the brutal act he had committed. That's when my second nightmare began. For 3 decades, my family and I endured appeal after appeal, each rooted in lies, distortions, and allegations of civil rights violations. And year after year, judge after judge, the conviction and sentence were unanimously upheld. Then 30 years after the fact, my family, society, and I were denied justice when 3 federal district court judges who have found error in every capital case that has come before them overturned the death sentence. Today, as my husband lies 33 years in the grave, his killer has become a wealthy celebrity. He pens books and social commentaries critical of our country. He regularly uses his nearly unlimited access to the prison telephone to do radio programs, has cable TV in his cell, and is permitted to hold his wife, children, and grandchildren in his arms when they visit. Old wounds have once again been ripped open. An additional insult is brought upon our law enforcement community in this country by President Obama's nomination of Debo Adegbile. While publicly demonstrating that he doesn't even know my husband's name, Mr. Adegbile feigned sympathy and caring for my family and me. In reality, Mr. Adegbile was a willing and enthusiastic accomplice in Mumia Abu-Jamal's bid to cheat us of the justice we had waited for so many years. Mr. Adegbile freely chose to throw the weight of his organization behind Mumia Abu-Jamal, and he has publicly stated that he would get Mumia Abu-Jamal off death row. Mr. Adegbile holds Mumia Abu-Jamal, a remorseless, unrepentant cop killer, in high esteem. We know this because attorneys working under Mr. Adegbile's supervision have stood before public rallies held in support of my husband's killer and openly professed that it was, quote, an extreme honor, end quote, to represent the man who put a hollow-based bullet into my husband's brain as he lay on the ground, wounded, unarmed, and defenseless. And while Mr. Adegbile and those who support his nomination will undoubtedly argue that he did not personally make such statements, he did nothing to counter or stop them. In the end, like so many attorneys before him, Mr. Adegbile's allegations of civil rights abuse rang hollow. Mumia Abu-Jamal's death sentence was overturned not because of civil rights abuse, as alleged by Mr. Adegbile, but because 3 judges with a personal dislike for capital punishment conveniently determined that the wording in a standard form given to a jury might have confused them. While Debo Adegbile may be a well-qualified and competent litigator, through his words, his decisions, and his actions, he has clearly and repeatedly demonstrated that he is not the best person to fill this important position. Certainly there are others with similar qualifications that would be better choices. I would argue that Mr. Adegbile's decision to defend a cop killer should preclude him from holding any public position. Your decision means a lot to me personally. The thought that Mr. Adegbile would be rewarded in part for the work he did for my husband's killer is revolting. Throughout my long ordeal, I have frequently been labeled a racist by many who support my husband's killer simply because he is black and I'm white. I've also been asked to throw my name, my voice, and my support behind political candidates from both parties. In each case, I have declined. I've always believed that my husband's death and my quest for justice transcends politics and race. From my heart, I'm asking you to do the same thing. Set aside any partisan feelings you have and do the right thing today when you vote on Mr. Adegbile's confirmation. Please spare my family and me from further pain. Sincerely, Maureen Faulkner. To conclude, Mr. President, I just would add, the Justice Department's website explains the Civil Rights Division, and I quote, fulfills a critical mission in upholding the civil and constitutional rights of all individuals. This requires that the head of the Civil Rights Division have an absolute commitment to truth and justice. There are many highly qualified Americans who can carry out this critical mission, and it is a critical mission. Mr. Adegbile's record and what he actually has done creates serious doubt that he's one of them. For these reasons, I urge my colleagues to vote against cloture on the nomination of Mr. Adegbile to serve as Assistant Attorney General for the Justice Department Civil Rights Divisions. And I note the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Alexander.